is up, everybody?
Welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 56. So today we're talking about the story of Jan Broberg. And this is really one of those stories that's going to leave you with your jaw dropped. It is bizarre how this whole thing unfolds. And if you have not heard about it, there's a Netflix documentary. We decided to cover it because of this Netflix documentary getting so much attention that it's been requested so many times recently. But we have known about this for like a couple years now.
Yeah, at least a couple of years.
Because we saw it on Dr. Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was at least like a year or two ago, I think.
It was in our old apartment, so it's been a while.
It's a very bizarre story about kidnapping and all these different events that unfold for Jan and really unfortunate things.
For their whole family. It really affected the whole family.
And it involves like the LDS church and everything. It's really bizarre.
So it gets weird.
Oh yeah, it gets very, very weird. Brainwashing and the whole 9 yards. So that is the topic for today's. But let's go ahead and jump right into this week's news stories. The first story I got for you guys is about space. Surprise, surprise. We have another news story about space. Every week I feel like there's stories about space and about how we're doing all these things, or all these companies are doing things to get us out there. And it was no different this week. Jeff Bezos, Amazon CEO, said that he thinks in the future humanity will live in giant space colonies rather than settling on the surface of planets. So interesting. This is like some Star Wars, Star Trek-esque shit, or even like that movie Passengers, where they had the giant spacecraft that were out there that people were living on. They had like plants and shit growing in it.
You know what this reminds me of? You probably don't know this, but on the Disney Channel, like way back in the day, there was something called Xenon. It was a movie. It was like this blonde girl, and Xenon. They lived. The plot of the story was that like all of humanity moved. Well, I think part of humanity moved to space and lives in this like giant spacecraft with like elevators, and there's like a school, and like it's a whole world in space.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
That'd be really cool.
And then there was like Xenon the sequel for the sequel. Isn't that funny? The sequel.
Fun Disney fact.
Oh,
folks.
it was lit. We should watch it, honestly.
But anyways, the concept is pretty simple. Basically, traveling to other planets requires a ton of fuel and energy in order to do this. So Jeff Bezos thinks it's more practical for us to build space colonies with the primary one that will be close to Earth. It's kind of like a home base in space. But then it would, like, if you think about it, if you're able to build space colonies, then you're able to explore, like if you have ability to never run out of fuel and explore space, through light sails and solar energy and things like that, you could potentially take a whole bunch of people and just fly through outer space and
it would be moving constantly, so it wouldn't just be stationary.
No, yeah. I assume so, yeah.
Or it would just be like floating there. How hard do you think it would be to build something though in space? Like I feel like that's got to be so hard.
It'd have to be huge too. If you think about it, how do you build something that big? I mean,
and it's got to be nice too. It can't be like the space station. Like that's, astronauts who know what they're doing. It's not really for like average people to start a life in.
No.
If you were going to have random people, it'd be like a lot more building involved, a lot more work. It would have to have way more amenities, like similar to something on Earth for people to want to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what we're going to see before that is like a space hotel, which Robert Bigelow at Bigelow Aerospace is currently working on. That's going to be something available to people on Hotwire very soon. You can hotwire a room in space for like $100,000 or something a night.
That's fucking crazy. Are we
He's
really
building
at
like
that world?
Yeah, that's literally like, it's just interesting to me that every week we have these new stories coming about space. Like space is like at the forefront of everybody's minds, it seems like these days in the mainstream, and in all circles, people are getting excited about space exploration. All these billionaires and investors, and like Elon Musk just this week was like, we need to build a freaking base on the moon that has humans in it all the time.
Yeah.
Why haven't we done that?
Yeah.
I'll do it if nobody else is going to do it. Which is interesting because then it goes back to the whole NASA conspiracy and all that with the moon landings and everything. Why the hell did we go there and never go back? And why didn't we had the technology to get us to the moon? You would think we would have set up like a lunar, operations center
like
or something
base,
there.
Something.
Yeah, something there. But we didn't for some reason. Or did we? So it's very interesting. And Jeff Bezos, He had this to say. He said the solar system can support 1 trillion humans. And then we'd have 1,000 Mozarts and 1,000 Einsteins. Think how incredible and dynamic that civilization will be. But if we're going to have that...
Oh, so he's saying we're only going to bring the smart ones? Leave all the dumb fucks at home?
No, he's just saying that we can literally... No, he's saying we can like expand the human race into the trillions. Like
if we move off the planet.
Right, because we're going to outgrow this planet, right? We're going to run...
What's the point of like, I guess... Yeah.
Well, he's saying that basically one idea to furthering human evolution is to just create a lot more fucking humans, and the chances are you're going to get a lot more Elon Musk types, a lot more Albert Einstein types, maybe Nikola Tesla types.
I thought they were saying they were only going to bring those smart people, so the ones that are in space are the smartest.
Well, maybe they're just going to bring the elite out there. Who knows? I mean, they might be the only ones who can afford it.
Yeah, that's true.
But he said in order to do that, you're going to have to capture more of the sun's output. We have to use all the resources that are out in space in terms of minerals and not just energy. And that's very doable, but we have to get started. So right now, there's an actual like private space race going on that you may not know. And that's Jeff Bezos' company's Blue Origin. He's actually building... Jeff Bezos is just like Elon Musk, maybe even like... Yeah. Better in the terms of he's got
a lot of fucking
more
money.
But he's building rockets and all sorts of spacecraft right now.
Interesting.
God. And it's interesting that like our government is not doing anything. Like as far as we know,
to stop them?
No, to build. Like why are these
they
private
totally
companies?
Are though.
But why aren't we seeing anything happen?
Because I think they hide some of their best stuff. Well, because if we knew that it existed, like they'd have to explain.
But we would know
things.
if they were blasting shit off, like just today.
How would we know? Because they do it in places where.
No, we can. Any people would be able to track it if
I guess nowadays because there's like satellites and shit. Yeah. So like people are watching the space station satellite.
Well, yeah, and every time
they could figure out a way to do it. There's probably somewhere where you can't see it.
Antarctica,
a lot of people think in Antarctica they are launching things from there, and it very well could be.
Maybe, yeah. Where?
Just saying.
No, it's possible. I mean, maybe but still, any type of object that leaves the Earth's atmosphere is going to get picked up by a satellite, is going to be picked up by something. Yeah. You know? I mean, could there potentially be like top secret, launches happening? Sure. But I don't know. It's interesting to think. But Jeff Bezos is planning to land a robotic space cargo carrier on the moon by 2023. So,
Damn.
Lots of things happening with space. But the next story I got is about Otto Warmbier, which I'll let you explain a little bit about Otto. If you don't know who he is, he's an American college student who died in 2017 after being returned from basically being in prison in North Korea.
So what basically happened, for those of you who haven't heard of this, because it did happen a little while ago. What was it, like 2016? 2015 even?
Yeah.
2016. So anyway, he was there with like a group of a bunch of different teenagers traveling.
College students, yeah.
I don't think he was like specific friends, but he like joined in with this group of like strangers.
It was like a tour group. So, and a lot of people don't even know you can go to North Korea and visit it, but a lot of times you have to go. I mean, you can probably go on your own, but it's best to go in these groups that say like, oh, we'll provide like a safe way through to see North Korea or whatever.
Well, I think to go, you have to kind of be with one of these groups because not anyone can just book it. Like these groups get approved to bring students there. It's all part of their efforts to make the younger generation more open to North Korea. But it's very, very specific about where you can go, what you can do. You're with these tour guides. They don't just let people like book a hotel and come. Like you have to have a reason for coming there. And if you're with one of these groups that's like responsible for you and controlling what you're doing, they're allowed to come. So anyway, there was this part of the hotel that they were staying, which they were staying in this really nice hotel. And there was a floor that they said you can't go on. It was like blocked off. And on their last night, a group of them decided to go ahead and go in there anyway. And Otto took and there's like security camera footage of it. So Otto took like a poster.
Yeah, propaganda
poster.
Which, why the fuck, if they didn't want people on this floor, why would they like not lock that floor down?
The whole floor was like bizarre. There was like weird. All these pictures that said like death to Americans and like pictures of bombs and weird shit. So yeah, they took that poster, and that is like extremely disrespectful.
Huge
to them.
no.
Yeah, it is really, really
big
bad.
oopsie there.
So he goes to the airport to leave the next day. And as he's going through security, they're like, stop this guy, whatever, pulled him out and took him. The police took him. All his friends and everyone got on the plane and left. So he was alone there. And it's very confusing exactly what happened to him during those days or weeks, months that he was there. And we don't know when exactly he passed away. They think he had a brain injury for a while, but we're not sure exactly.
And like he was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor.
Yeah. And then those labor camps, they seriously abused them. And I'm sure as the American, he was probably targeted a lot and whatever.
Or tortured. I mean, he could have absolutely been tortured.
So that's how he ended up in a coma.
Yeah, because he came home from North Korea in like a vegetative state. Yeah, he was.
There was no hope for him at that point.
He was almost already gone. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, they think that he may have not had even like good treatment after he was first hit or whatever happened to him happened. That they may have not have even treated it as a coma or as a serious brain injury for a while, and it could have led to a coma, like brain swelling.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they weren't keeping like tabs on his health or anything.
Yes.
So the reason that we brought this up is because. As many of you know, our president went to a summit in Vietnam where he met with Kim Jong-un about various things. But one of the things that was brought up was Otto Warmbier. And I think a reporter asked the president about it. And basically the reporter was like, did you question Kim Jong-un about Otto Warmbier? Basically, nobody did anything for him and his family. Like that, nobody tried to get justice, or nobody really did much of anything. So, President Trump had a less than stellar answer, basically saying that he doesn't believe that Kim Jong-un had any knowledge of Otto Warmbier or his treatment while being detained there, which is just absolutely complete bullshit. Because
it's infuriating, honestly.
Kim Jong-un
makes me so mad. It makes my hands sweat. My hands are sweating. Pisses me off. It's like it's such a slap in the face.
Very cold and just like so unnecessary and so disrespectful.
This family, the Warmbiers, have had issues with Obama's administration and now Trump's administration not supporting them. So it doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. They felt like no one gave a shit about him at all.
Well, yeah, and when our Obama was in office, like they were pissed because they didn't do enough something aggressive enough to go and get him.
Yeah,
before
and they
it was
probably
too late.
Should have.
Yeah, but it's like, what do you do? I mean, what do you do at that point without starting a war? I mean, you can't just like break into another country, especially one like North Korea.
You can like negotiate. There's probably things that they wanted. I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not like an expert on foreign affairs, especially with North Korea. But I know the family said that there were all these different things they wanted them to do, and they didn't do it. And it would have saved their sons' lives. So
yeah, and so basically, in response to President Trump's very negative remarks about Otto Warmbier and Kim Jong-un, they said, Kim and his evil regime are responsible for the death of our son Otto. Kim and his evil regime are responsible for unimaginable cruelty and inhumanity. No excuses or lavish praise can change that. So, and I don't blame them. If it was my son, I would be so extremely pissed. Especially about the fact that the president seems to be friends with Kim Jong-un, which is just fucking crazy.
It's really disturbing, honestly. Yeah. Like, let's not forget who this motherfucker is. This guy killed his own brother with acid. Like, he's insane. He's killed thousands and thousands of people, and here Trump's over here saying he's a really nice guy. Actually, he said things like that, like he's actually really nice. Really nice? What the fuck? What the fuck? I'm sorry, I cannot get behind this insanity or like act like that's normal. That is so
it's not
so weird,
and it's not even
sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not.
He's
a dictator, a ruthless, just horrible dictator. And be like, oh yeah, he's I think he's telling the truth. He said he didn't do it, so we believe.
Yeah,
like,
basically he's just like, I take his word for it.
Of course
it's like,
he did.
Of course he's going to lie about it. Like, what do you think? It's just so dumb and just a very insensitive remark. And I don't think it takes, it's not, a political to say that, our president has some dictator tendencies. It just seems like he, cozies up to these guys so much.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think people on both sides of the aisle and in the middle can all agree as Americans that this is fucking bullshit, man.
And just concerning.
It's
and
very
really
concerning.
Scary. We cannot normalize that type of person, that they're okay. And what they do, we can just let it slide. That's fucked up.
And it also goes to show you that, like, if you ever get arrested in a foreign country, like, no one's coming for you, you know?
Well, not just a foreign country, but North Korea.
But I mean, especially a country that's literally a sworn enemy of ours. Like, you know, you're screwed. Yeah. The government's not going to look out for you.
I wouldn't let my kid go to North Korea.
Yeah.
I don't care how adventurous you are.
I just don't see why.
Go to somewhere else.
Anywhere else.
Plenty of places.
God. Yeah, it's crazy. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think, you know, for Otto, he deserves to have his story told and for people to know, like, this is just complete bullshit that, you know, we don't support our own people like that. I mean, I couldn't even see this happening. It's interesting that this only seems to happen to United States citizens too, versus like British or Canadian. I don't know. Like, obviously, you know, foreign, you know, people from other countries that get captured and stuff, you know, end up sometimes die or get killed.
Well, because they can use it for leverage if we have like beef with each other, you know?
Yeah. It's just, it's a fucked up situation. But let's go ahead and get into today's main topic. But before we do, I want to quickly thank our sponsors for today. Our first sponsor today is Quip. One of the most important things we do for our health every day is brushing our teeth, yet most of us don't do it properly. Quip is a better electric toothbrush created by dentists and designers. Quip was designed to make brushing your teeth more simple, affordable, and even enjoyable, which is 100% true. Both Kendall and I use Quip, and we have for a couple months now. And I must say, my mouth definitely feels cleaner than it used to be.
Yes, mine too.
And I just feel like I get a better clean with Quip toothbrushes because of the 2-minute timer. So now I always get the perfect amount of clean. The vibrations are like just enough sensitivity, so it's not like overbearing, and
the bristles aren't like pokey and hard.
Yeah, it's a really nice toothbrush. It's like the Tesla of toothbrushes. And what's great is that you don't ever have to worry about like changing your brush head because they're delivered on a dentist recommended schedule for you. So all you got to do is swap out the battery in the brush head and you're good to go for a while longer. So it's super easy, super convenient, and also affordable. That's why we love Quip and why they're backed by over 20,000 dental professionals. Quip starts at just $25. And if you go to getquip.com/milehigher right now, you get your first refill pack for free with a Quip electric toothbrush. That's your first refill pack free at getquip.com/milehigher. The second sponsor for today is Torrid.
So Torrid is a fashion brand for women who are sizes 10 to 30. And they have pretty much everything. Literally jeans, intimates, cute dresses, tops, shoes. They have really good shoes. Torrid is focused on designs and styles that are perfection for your body. And all of these pieces are wear tested and real on curvy women with diverse shapes and sizes, which is actually really, really important.
Because it can be hard to find clothes for if you're curvy.
Yes, or it's just like, I'm like, what the fuck where am I supposed to put my boobs in this? Or, it's like crazy. But one size does not fit all. Inclusive sizing for curvy women isn't just a trend at Torrid. It's who they are and what they've been doing for years, which is true. I straight up have been shopping there since I was 17, high school. And I love Torrid for shoes especially. I really want to recommend their shoes because I know I say this a lot, but I have a high instep and kind of a wider foot. And their shoes are so comfortable. They're built with like curvier feet in mind. I don't even know if that's a thing. I don't know if I have curvy feet, but my feet are I have high arches and stuff and wider feet. And like boots and stuff, they're a little wider and just more comfortable. So right now, you can go to torrid.com and use the promo code MileHigher15 for $15 off every $50 you spend. That means you can get $150 off a $500 order. And that is torrid.com, promo code MileHigher15 for $15 off every $50 you spend at torrid.com. Once again, that promo code is MileHigher15.
All right, good job. Let's get into the shocking story of Jan Broberg.
This is fucking shocking though. That's warranted.
It is. It's a very bizarre story, and I haven't heard another story like it before. So Let's talk about Jan. Jan Broberg, she was born on July 31st, 1962. And up until her first kidnapping at the age of 12, Jan describes her childhood in Pocatello, Idaho as wonderful and extremely happy. Her dad owned Atkin Florist, while her mother was a homemaker. Jan had 2 younger siblings named Karen and Susan, who she jokingly said she'd boss around like any big sister would. The sisters would often ride their bikes to the Bilo market and buy penny candy, and then they'd head out to the old racket club to go swimming. They would talk about anything and everything. So just a very like normal, middle-class family. She had sisters that she was extremely close with, Karen and Susan, and it's just bizarre. The Brobergs, which is her last name, were devoted members of the Church of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. Mary Ann, whose her mother was the church chorister. When the Berchtolds, Gail, Robert, and their 5 children moved next door, the husbands bonded over being business and family men. The wives naturally gravitated to each other, and the kids got along great too. So basically, this new family comes along, and it's like the exact makeup of their own family in a way, and it's kind of like
a mirrored family.
It's like a mirrored family. So
everyone has a friend.
Yeah. Did you have a family like that ever growing up? Where like there was like somebody your age, somebody your sister's age.
Across the street.
Your parents got along with somebody.
Nah, my parents hated them, honestly.
My parents hated everybody in the neighborhood.
Well, they were psycho. But anyway, no, I don't know. That's kind of nice though, to have like a perfect family. Actually, I did have that one time. Me and my sister on a beach. We met this family literally on the beach, and that was in Florida. And it turns out they were like 5 minutes from our actual home in Colorado. How weird is that? When we got home, we hung out with them all the time, and my parents liked them, and all of us, 2 girls, just like me and my sister. So yeah, yes, we have.
And it's like as a family, it's convenient when that happens.
Yeah,
then
it is.
Everybody's got a friend, right?
Yeah, and you can it's like a family outing to all hang out together. It is convenient. It's nice.
So the Berchtold, the man or the father, the husband of the Berchtold family is named Robert. And I'll refer to him probably a couple different ways because he goes by a couple different names.
So just to be clear, this is...
Because they both have the same name, which is interesting. Bob there's Bob Berchtold and then Bob Broberg as well.
Exactly. So I wanted to make sure. So Broberg is Jan's family. Berchtold is the man who we will be talking about who gets involved with Jan Broberg. Just because it's a little confusing with the 2 names.
So I'll probably refer to him as Robert or B most of the time.
They called him Brother B.
They gave him a nickname because basically these 2
they're Mormons, so they say brother whatever.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Brother B. That was his name.
So this family comes into their life, and Robert Berchtold starts paying attention to the 3 Broberg girls, Jan, Karen, and Susan. But he was particularly fond of Jan. And Jan became particularly fond of Robert.
And just saying, hang on. If you saw this guy, I feel like as a mom, I would see this motherfucker and know he was a pedophile in like 2 seconds. He's like textbook pedo. I'm sorry, but doesn't he look like it?
Yeah.
He just has this weird ass look on his face. He just creeps me out.
He does
the slicked hair.
Creepy vibe to him, yeah.
Yeah, just like I would not be like, oh, come in, cuddle and wrestle with my 3 girls on the ground.
Yeah, and like take pictures with them and stuff. Yeah. So
it's weird.
But he's like the ultimate, he's got tons of charisma, he's charming, he's really fun. And so the girls like really gravitated to him for that reason, because he was a fun-loving adult who was always up for games. And because they became so fond of him, they started calling him by the nickname Brother B.
So it's like kind of hard to see that side of him because you don't really get to see that much in the documentary. So it's really hard to see what any of them really saw in him, because I'm telling you, he's like really creepy.
Well, yeah, from an outside view, you're like,
yeah, like what the hell? He was that charming and
stranger
wonderful.
danger, man.
What was his birthday?
Stranger danger. So basically, they created this tremendous amount of trust, and Jan said that basically there was no inkling whatsoever of any sort of weird things or potentially, creepy things happening. They all thought of him as like a fun-loving dad. He was well-loved, well-respected by many members in the community. And remember, they both were a part of the LDS church, so they both went to church. And so, yeah, you trust people that you go to church with most of the time. So nothing to worry about. But basically, what ends up happening is Robert is essentially integrating himself into the Broberg family. And what's interesting is that Jan and Karen shared a basement bedroom. And Robert, who owned a furniture store, built a wall, which gave the girls their own rooms. More importantly to him, it gave Jan privacy. First creepy thing.
Oh my gosh, this is funny. He was an Aquarius.
Interesting.
Like, what a creep. I'm sorry. Like, I love Aquarians. I actually really do have a lot of Aquarius friends, but
they have the ability to be.
You guys can be weird. Really weird. Strange birds often.
So when you're listening to the story, from an outside perspective, it's easy to be like, that's fucking weird. That's weird. Red flag, red flag, red flag. But to these families, they had immense trust for each other, and Robert had never given them any reason not to trust him. And he was super friendly. He built a wall downstairs for the girls so that they could have their own room. But thinking like later on, it seems like that wasn't even something that they necessarily wanted. They liked being together. Jan and her sister did. So it was kind of interesting that he just like inserted himself and was like, I'm going to build a wall between these girls' bedrooms.
Yeah. What on earth? Can you imagine me like, oh, sure. I mean, I guess that's a good idea. Go ahead, build a wall in my kid's bedroom.
I'd be like, what the?
Why do you want a wall, you creepy fuck? So if you haven't already figured it out, he clearly wanted the wall to separate the girls.
Right. Because he has this eye for Jan. And what's crazy is that this guy comes into their life, and the Broberg family had no idea that Robert had been convicted of raping a child and had spent time in prison, or that the Church of LDS had reprimanded him in January 1974 for his behavior involving another young girl. So that's crazy. And when you're looking at some of these stories, they're so bizarre, and you're like, how could this ever happen nowadays? And chances are it'd be very hard for, somebody that raped somebody or was a sex offender to just go unnoticed. But back then they didn't have like a sex offender registry or anything like that available to the public yet. So in the wake of what ends up happening to Jan with Robert, 6 women would come forward to Jan, declaring themselves to be past underage victims of Robert Berchtold. Wow. So this guy was a full-on pedo, full-on sex offender, and nobody knew about it seems like. Jan, prior to being kidnapped, had on at least one occasion spent the night at the Berchtold's house, and she recalls in the documentary how she woke up to find her underwear pulled down and B's hands on her. And when she realized that this is what was going on, he would always explain, why to her and be like, she was tossing and turning and her pants must have just fell down or something. So Jan, trusting this adult individual so much because she's very young at this point. She's, around 12 years old. She's going to take the trusting adult's word for it, What's even crazier is Jan went on vacation with the Berchtolds to Seattle in June 1973 and recalls waking up groggy. Robert apparently drugged her on numerous occasions, telling her it was an allergy medication.
Ugh, crazy.
And when she woke up in Seattle, she remembers seeing a naked Robert standing by the bed.
Ugh, gross.
Ah, God.
So weird. I swear, as much as like I've read about pedophiles and like why they do the things they do and like trying to understand their brains, which you can only understand so much. Psychology tries to, but it's just bizarre. But I just can't even wrap my head around it. I can't understand why you would want to do this. I guess I have none of that in me, so I just don't get it. But it weirds me out that people are into kids. Like, I just don't like, what about that is attractive, or it really weirds me out. It's insane. It kind of every time I hear about it, it blows my mind. Just
I know.
What the fuck are you doing?
Well, it's the same as like people that are into killing, like serial killers and stuff. It's like, why are you into that? What about you in your brain? And we'll talk about that later. Like, what could be the cause for, his pedophilia. Tendencies,
There's got to be something, right? I mean, it's so bizarre. I feel like you don't just do that unless you have like had something happen to you in your childhood.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what the case is for Robert. Is his childhood was fucked too, as many many times it is for these people, these sick people. But what's interesting is that Robert essentially started grooming the Broberg family. He started, flirting with Marianne, the girl's mother. And Marianne actually recalls being flattered by Robert's compliments about her body and other flirtation remarks. And eventually at a church function in Utah, they wandered off from the crowd and made out among doing other things. But that was the extent of it. At that point in time, they didn't have sex, but they were basically like hooking up and, doing whatever else. And Robert managed to seduce her essentially. So he's not only going after their daughter, he's going after the mother now too. What's
That's
even
so
more
weird.
shocking though is Bob Broberg.
Yeah.
Bob Broberg's recollection of being in the car with Robert one day while his friend was venting to him that he couldn't stand his wife anymore. So Robert's like, which he was married, had kids too, which is so crazy.
And they're just like chilling in the car, hanging out, talking, just having a bro talk. Like, oh man, I fucking hate my wife. That's basically what he said. And that he doesn't he never has sex and he just needs to have sex so bad.
He needs to be relieved, right?
And then he starts coming on to Bob.
Yeah, basically Robert asked Bob to
Robert.
relieve him of his, basically masturbating.
Yeah.
Masturbation.
Y'all know.
Yeah. So Bob is now sexually involved with Robert as well at this point.
And I feel like we have a very, very murky version of what happened. I'm sure we're not getting the full story because, first of all, Bob kept this secret for a really long time. And it was because of this documentary, he finally told the truth.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for him. You can tell watching the dude. He's just so embarrassed,
So broken
so mortified.
about it.
It feels so badly for cheating on his wife. And it's just, you can tell he just carries the shame around, not just because he cheated, but because it's with someone who, later on he finds out didn't do the nicest things to his daughter, which makes it way worse.
Did horrific things to his daughter.
Yeah. But he was like, oh yeah, he just casually asked me to relieve him. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Obviously there's
and then he
more.
did it and that was it.
Well, there's been like accusations thrown at him, like perhaps he's homosexual or whatever. But
He might
obviously
be.
we don't know.
Or he might be bisexual or whatever.
But at the end of the day, it comes back to Robert and his ability to manipulate and his ability to
seduce and charm.
Really just, he reminded me of Ted Bundy in a lot of ways, just because he's got that like charming aspect to him where you almost believe everything he says. And obviously it was somebody that they, went to church with again, was a member of the community. So, it was just really such a bizarre event to happen to them. But essentially, Robert, what I think is happening is Robert is doing these things because he wants to have leverage on the parents in order for him to get closer to Jan. Like that's his whole purpose of doing the seduction of his parents, is to gain control over them. Because what he eventually does is he holds those sexual encounters he had with them over their heads and essentially like blackmails them.
Yeah.
And is like, if you go to the police or you do anything to essentially get me in trouble, I'm going to release all of this dirty laundry on you guys.
Yeah. And I think he just really must have just buttered them up, just telling them. Jan basically said that he was saying, you're so beautiful. I love you. I want you so bad. Your body, your legs, oh my God. Just making her feel like a goddess to the point where will do anything.
Yeah.
And same with Bob, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no.
He just probably was like, oh, you're such a great man, Bob, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think especially at this point after he had a sexual encounter with Bob, the filmmaker of Abducted in Plain Sight said they tried to actually look through records and stuff to find more evidence of encounters that Bob had with Robert, because the filmmaker said that she feels like it seems like there must have been more than just a one-time experience for him to have this much guilt and shame about it.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And it seems like that was the case. So this could have been like Robert was deeply entrenched in each of their lives and was doing it in order to manipulate the parents. Robert was actually able to convince both parents that he needed to sleep in Jan's bed with her for therapeutic reasons.
I shouldn't laugh. I was choking. But can you imagine fucking allowing that for your own child? What the hell?
I just don't know anybody that would do that.
Sure. Like, I just think of, I mean, I had a lot of like my parents' friends that I was close with, like my Uncle Jim or my Uncle Zeus, like men that I trusted in my life that were like uncles or father
That are
figures to
family.
me. They're
Straight up family.
Family or really, really close friends. And my parents would never allow them
God.
to sleep in my bed. There is no way. If they even asked that, my parents would have like filed a police report. This whole case, and it's so sad because I feel like the parents, and there's so much criticism about them, rightfully so, but I don't think they're like the brightest people. Like, they seem like sweet, simple little folk, but they were like easily seduced and tricked and then blackmailed and shamed. And they made a lot of mistakes because all of that led to, you know, years of torment that we'll get into for Jan because of them being in that situation with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially allowing him to, because I think Bob Jan's dad even said like he never felt good about like him doing that. But Robert was so manipulative that he literally like said, oh yeah, my doctor said I need to lay in bed and listen to these tapes, these therapeutic tapes. And the guy that was his therapist or whatever was like not even a legit dude. So basically it was all set
creepy.
up.
No one would say that.
Yeah. Like,
please go lay with a child. Ask some neighbor to lay with their kid. Fuck
and
no.
it's supposed to like help him, like reduce these thoughts of whatever, you know.
Did he tell them he was having the thoughts?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so they didn't know why.
Right. They never knew why.
That.
Right.
There's no way my parents would have ever done that. Like, been like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess if it's for therapy, sure. Like, use our kid like it's an item. That's like being like, can I borrow your fucking mop? Sure. You know, it's like someone's child. It's so bizarre. They gave her away as something as easily as like a vacuum. Let him use her like a tool, an appliance or something.
Essentially, that's
letting
what
him
happened.
Borrow it like an item.
Yeah,
just bizarre.
And Jan even said that she would be with him like overnight. I think a couple times, all by herself and stuff. Like,
and do you think
they gave full reign to him? It's crazy.
Do you think they had any idea that that's what he was doing? I mean, they must. How stupid can you be?
Know,
I'm
man.
sorry.
Well,
I know they've been through a lot. I'm not trying to be mean.
Their excuses, they never thought, because again, you got to think this is the 1970s, so it was a very different time period, and I think a lot of people would attest. People just trusted each other more. There wasn't sex offenders.
I know, but to sleep with my kid,
there wasn't
like
pedophilia.
They really didn't think that was going on.
I don't know.
That's like,
well, they thought he was a Mormon. They thought he was a good Mormon and probably following the faith.
Still,
and everything.
like,
but
you don't
still,
need to sleep with my daughter. That's weird.
It's weird. It's very weird.
It's really weird. It seems like a duh.
So all of this grooming, essentially, is what it's called, led to Jan being abducted by Robert on October 17th, 1974. One day after school, Robert asked if he could take Jan out horseback riding. Which, would you ever let your child by herself go off with not a family member, but a neighbor, dude? Her parents did. And at first, her mother was apprehensive since it was a school night after all, but eventually she agreed. As soon as she was in the car, Robert drugged Jan and staged a sort of fake kidnapping to look like the two of them had been taken. Which, yeah. He literally like broke the window in his car, got blood all over him and stuff to make it look like they had gotten kidnapped. And after Jan was missing for a couple days, the family finally decided to contact the FBI, which this was so weird to me.
After a couple days.
It was a Friday night, and back then again, it's different times, and like this shit didn't happen all that often, so the law enforcement agencies were not open 24/7. Obviously, like local police was, but they didn't call the local police, which is weird to me.
No, they didn't. They went straight to the FBI.
They went straight to the FBI. I wonder why. I just want to ask them why they did that. Because the FBI office or the field office near their where they lived wasn't even open until Monday. So instead of dialing 911 and, my child has possibly been kidnapped and, getting the word out there, they waited. They waited to actually get a hold of the FBI. So FBI Special Agent Pete Welsh caught the case on October 22nd, 1974, and would be on it for the next several years. Right away, the FBI discovered that the Berchtold family motorhome was missing from the storage unit where it was usually parked. Soon they found Robert's abandoned Ford Maverick, the driver's side window broken and a bit of blood on the inside of the car. There was also one set of footprints leading away, leading Welsh to believe he had carried Jan into the motorhome. So basically, he drove Jan to the motorhome, got in the motorhome, and then took off in the motorhome, pretending and trying to stage it like a kidnapping. They stayed off the radar for 35 days, all the while Robert was busy brainwashing Jan, playing her tapes that wove a whole fantastical story about being half alien and that it was her job to save a planet on the verge of destruction. This is perhaps one of the most bizarre things to the story is Robert was like a big fan of UFOs and aliens and stuff, and he decided to
typical Aquarius,
like a real,
they love weird shit,
like a real fan of it. So he convinced Jan by essentially creating these tapes of these like alien voices that he probably recorded, telling her to do things and that they had this mission and that they had to save this alien planet. And in order to do that, she essentially had to bear a child with Robert. And she just had these playing in her ear. She was tied down in the motorhome for a while. She was strapped down. Yeah. She thought she really had been like taken by aliens and stuff. Like,
yeah, imagine being in that situation. You're wake up
at 12.
You're somewhere you're not sure where you are, but you can tell that you're moving. She said she could feel movement, so she knew she was like in some type of car. And then to have a speaker go off.
Yeah, he had like a little like tape recorder thing near her head that just would turn on and start playing stuff.
Well, he probably played it once he saw that she was awake.
Yeah.
So then she's greeted by a little voice being like, "Hello, you are."
He's like, "Hello."
Alien. Can you imagine?
And at 12 years old,
yeah,
you're like, "What the fuck?"
And poor
You'd really
thing,
believe it.
Totally believed it, like full on believed this, lived this, like thought she was half an alien. So did you already mention about her dad?
No, go ahead.
So Robert told her that, or I guess the message told her that her father, Bob, was not her real father, and that she was actually fathered by an alien.
Yeah.
So her mother fucked an alien and had her, is what she was told. And she believed it. So it's really sad because later on, she does reunite with her family, and she's very, very cold towards Bob.
Yeah, well, she's been being brainwashed from age 12.
Thinking he's some stranger to her now.
Right.
And it's her
being
real dad.
Convinced that she is on this mission to save this alien planet.
Yeah.
And its voices had names too. It was Zephra and Zeta, I think.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because
the aliens' names.
I'm like, clearly this dude knew about Zeta Reticulum and all that. So
and I think Jan felt like important and special because she thought she was half an alien, and that maybe the future of the world depended on her. I mean, if you really believed that, she was like kind of into the idea of having a baby, like probably a little girl was.
Oh, yeah.
Not the whole idea of,
perfectly.
How you do that, but like, a baby. But then obviously she knew what you'd have to do to have a baby.
And you're 12 years old at this point.
And that's terrifying.
Yeah. And it's disgusting because this dude is 40 odd years old and she's 12.
And at that age, most kids, I feel like a lot of kids don't even know at that point. I feel like at age 12, even talking about sex or seeing it or thinking anything like that would like make me sick to my stomach.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I honestly can't imagine.
I can't imagine
hearing
either.
Something like this and being like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And this is when Robert started raping Jan.
Yeah.
Basically convincing her it was all part of this master plan. And of course, she was instructed that if she told anybody about any of it, particularly the part about him having sex with her, her father would be killed, Karen would go blind, and Susan would be taken away. Or essentially, Susan, or they would replace Jan with Susan.
Now, what's really, really weird about this is he would barely do it. I don't know how to say this. It's so disturbing.
Yeah. So
he would like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can say it. I mean, it's fine. So basically,
it just grosses me out.
Yeah. So basically, we found out that when he was raping her, he wasn't, fully going in. He was only going in about an inch so that it wouldn't break the hymen or whatever. And
yeah, it's really
which I think it was probably planned so that there was essentially no evidence, of her being raped later on. I think that was probably his thinking, which is just fucked. And either way, I mean, that's still rape. But on November 20th, 1974, Robert called his brother Joe and asked him to contact the Brobergs to get their permission for him to marry Jan, because the marriage they had apparently entered into in Mexico, where it's actually federally legal, to give consent for marriage at 12.
That's fucking crazy. Is it still legal there? Let me look it up.
Double check. This is 1974. They might have changed that shit. But yeah. So basically, he's like telling his brother, I got Jan in Mexico and
18.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, that's good. I was like, is this still fucking like that? Girls can marry, though, at 14. And boys can marry at 16 with parental consent, though.
Well, that's how it is in the U.S., too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure with parental consent, you can get married like 16. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. So Robert is doing everything he can to try to or I guess it was a part of his plan to get Jan's parents.
At 14 or 16.
Yeah. He was trying to get Jan's parents to give him permission to marry Jan, which is what he wanted all along. And now he's got this, dirty laundry on them that he can, pull out on him. And Joe, Robert's brother, said in the documentary that his brother was always a sexual pervert. And at this point in time, the family, the Broberg family, has the full FBI investigating this, tracing Robert's whereabouts, and they eventually caught up with him in his motorhome in Mexico.
And that's when she was talking on the phone with them, right? Or was that the second time she was talking? Okay, never mind.
So it was the middle of the night on November 23rd, 1974, when Mexican police officers stormed the motorhome and arrested Robert Berchtold. At that point, Jan had been missing from Pocatello for over a month. It took the FBI in conjunction with the police in Mexico to locate her. During their investigation, authorities learned that Berchtold had taken her to a small Mexican resort town called Mazatlan along the Pacific coast. Mexican authorities took both Jan and Robert to a nearby prison, and he was put into a prison cell, and she was put in a small interrogation room. Jan recalls, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't speak Spanish at the time. Can you imagine at 12 years old having that happen to you? How traumatic that would be? Just that part of it.
I know.
It'd be so horrible.
She went through so much.
Luckily, a couple of LDS missionaries serving in the area were able to translate. They notified Jan that her parents were coming to pick her up within the next 24 hours. And as they spoke to the terrified young girl, she gobbled down food from McDonald's that the missionaries had brought her. It was the only food she had eaten in more than a day. God. While Jan was taken back to southeast Idaho by her parents, Berchtold remained at the prison until he was extradited back to the U.S. to face kidnapping charges. However, Jan said his punishment was not severe. Basically, when he came back, he pleaded that he had a mental deficiency and had some sort of mental breakdown. Robert ended up spending a few months in a mental hospital, and that was it. Isn't that crazy?
That is.
If he had actually been charged with any sexual crimes against Jan, he would have most certainly faced a much stiffer penalty, like a long prison sentence.
Yeah.
However, the whole thing with Jan is she's basically falling in love with this man because that's what he's brainwashed her into thinking.
Well, and she thinks she's this like part alien on this like extreme mission with him to save the planet.
Exactly.
Like,
well, yeah, you're right. That's the real reason why she didn't want to reveal any of the details is because the aliens who spoke to her through the intercom knew how to keep her quiet.
Yeah. Well, remember when he got arrested, he gave the dudes in jail like one of his gold rings. I don't know, maybe his wedding ring, even a gold ring, in order to let him speak with Jan.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told her, the aliens have come to me and they told me 4 things, like 4 rules. I can't remember exactly what they were, but one of them was like, you can't talk about the mission, which the mission includes the sex and everything. So she kept that secret
by 16 and stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, at this point, she really believes all this shit is real and is just is going along with it
and was in love with this man.
Defending Robert on her return to the U.S. and to her family, she was like, just being like, "Why'd you do this? I want to be with him," and all these different things. And Robert, meanwhile, was fighting kidnapping charges and mental hospital and stuff. And meanwhile, the Brobergs are like, "We don't want you to ever be around this guy. We need to." Figure out a way that he doesn't.
They should have moved. I would have fucking moved states.
Right?
Get away from him. Such a creep.
But on December 24th, 1974, Gail Berchtold, so Robert's wife, presented Bob Broberg with some papers to sign. Basically, the papers were to agree to no longer participate in the case against her husband or else they would expose their dirty laundry. So the sexual encounters that Bob and Marianne had.
And as like a religious person, a Mormon, that would imagine the fear of that coming out.
Well, that's what I think
the
it was.
Infidelity on her part, the infidelity on his part, plus the homosexual acts, in the Mormon church, that's definitely not.
And think about like Bob's business.
Yeah.
Imagine if the papers picked that up, then that would just be, it would completely change their life. And not only that, but their business could go downhill. It could create, like back then, if those types of secrets came out, people would judge the hell out of them, like nowadays we don't really, if people are, have affairs or infidelity, we're like, okay, whatever, it happens all the time. But back then that was like a huge deal. So obviously they didn't want that coming out. So they went ahead and signed the papers for Gail and Robert, basically saying that their daughter was not taken by force or against her will, nor was she held or confined against her will at any time while in the company of the defendant.
It's so insane. In the documentary, they had the parents read their own statement that they made.
That they
and
signed off on.
They were just so ashamed.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like basically the parents, this was one of the biggest mistakes that they made, in my opinion, is they chose
to
their own
themselves.
pride and egos and lives essentially over their kids, their daughters.
Most people would be like, I don't care what you blackmail me with. Like, you sexually abused my daughter and kidnapped her. I'm going to press charges. But yeah, they made the decision to try to save themselves from public humiliation.
Yeah. And look how that helped them out. Not too much. But for obvious reasons, once Robert was released from the hospital, he was not allowed anywhere near the Broberg household in Pocatello. But that didn't stop him from making contact with Jan. On multiple occasions over the next year and a half, she would receive handwritten notes from children while attending her junior high school. The notes featured instructions telling her to go to a specific payphone at a certain time after school and wait for a phone call, which is weird that Robert was clearly going to other kids that knew her or were in her class or whatever, slipping them notes, being like, hey, get this to Jan. So it wasn't like him directly doing it. And Jan, of course, being obedient, followed the orders. She said, when I would pick up the phone, it was always either Robert or the aliens on the other end, always reminding me about completing my mission. Jan said the handwritten notes were written by Robert, who would then bribe one of her classmates to pass it to her. While she was at home and supposedly safe and sound, the brainwashing tape recorder returned to Jan during the night. That's fucking creepy, man.
That is really creepy.
That's so creepy. So she would like hear that, she would like constantly be reminded from these tapes of what her mission was.
Yeah.
And Robert would frequently visit. And when Robert would visit, they would have sex, committing statutory rape multiple times.
Yeah, and she said like at that point in their relationship, since he was allowed to or didn't see her as often, it became all about the mission because, you have to do it before you're 16. So you got to like get going.
Yeah.
Is what she was told. So she was always stressed out about completing the mission. And every time she was with him and was alone, he would try to complete the mission.
And what's crazy is the way that this guy like slithers his way back into this family, because
it's insane.
It's really insane.
He had
complete control over the Broberg family and had all of them at his fingertips.
You'd think he'd be this like sexy guy, a charming man, like really tall, muscular or something. I don't know. He's just like this dorky little pedo looking dude. I'm sorry, but I do not understand how they were so charmed by this guy. Am I missing something? Well, he seemed like a total weirdo. He's definitely not attractive. He didn't even seem like, from the recordings and stuff, he didn't seem that like interesting or charming to me.
Well, here's one idea that I have. Here's one theory I have about this is I think the fact that both of these families, especially the Brobergs, were such dedicated members of, the Mormon faith and the Mormon church. And this is something that, we got to explore further in an episode, but the Mormon church and the LDS organization does have some brainwashing tendencies for sure.
Yeah.
And it's quite possible that many people that are a part of that faith are very susceptible and, what do we want to say, lower IQ, Obviously not all of them, but some of them that kind of fall victim to that type of religion / cult / kind of like Scientology too. It's the same type of thing. Like the Mormon church is very similar in its setup to Scientology.
I get that, and that makes sense. It still doesn't make sense though why they would allow this man to continue.
Because in their minds, they don't think he's capable of anything evil.
But they've both hooked up with him and stuff. Why? I'm saying, how is he charming enough to get all three of them?
Well, at that point, it's just, yeah. I mean,
he must have been that charming. I mean, what are the chances of that? And it's not just because he's Mormon. Just because you're Mormon.
No, he's clearly smart though. He's clearly like a what do you even call it? I don't know. He's clearly like an evil genius in a way.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
He set this whole thing up.
I mean, all three of them were just completely brainwashed by him.
Absolutely.
And that just weirds me out. You would think that someone like that would be like really attractive and charming and like, I don't know. He just looked like such a weirdo to me. He didn't seem like that type.
But back then and maybe in their neighborhood, that was the hottest shit out there.
So his little glasses and little dork ass haircut is the hottest thing out there.
Yeah, that was in the 1970s, dude. People looked goofy as hell in the 70s.
True. But still.
It's such a different time.
I don't know.
But obviously, because of all this and him still manipulating his way in the family of the Brobergs, their home life just continued to decline. And in the spring of 1975, Mary Ann, Jan's mother, visited Robert, and they ended up having sex, which started an 8-month affair.
Yeah, and she
completely fell in love with him.
Yeah. Totally.
So he had some charming skills.
She said that basically he was so nice to her and complimented her and made her feel so beautiful and sexy and just charmed her, I guess, till the point where she was, willing to have sex with him.
Yeah, this guy was like
this guy who
the nicest guy you could possibly think. He had to be that type of person that
to sleep with him even after he took your daughter.
Right.
And come on, these people must have some idea in the back of their head that maybe he raped their daughter. I mean, if she had the doctor's check, it must be on her radar. How much as a mother can you turn a blind eye? Right? Like if that were my daughter, there's no way I would just assume that didn't happen. Like why else would a grown man take a little girl? I don't know. It's so weird.
It's very weird. It's weird that there was no thoughts of, could this guy be a pedophile?
Yeah, and have done something to my daughter, and now I'm sleeping with him.
And I don't buy the fact of, we didn't think there was anybody like that out there, any type of sex offender. What was that? We didn't know what that was.
Yeah, bullshit.
And I mean, obviously there probably wasn't as much talk about it and awareness around it, but still, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
This guy is clearly pushing things here. And in fact, Robert, during his affair with Mary Ann, would try to convince her to leave her husband and start a new life in Utah. Because actually, after this first kidnapping, he ended up moving down to Utah to work for his brother at a car dealership, actually. And his brother actually said that he was like one of the best car salesmen they've had. Like he was so good at
charming.
Ultimate charmer.
Conniving, in
some way.
I guess we just didn't get to see much of that on the documentary, so it's hard because there wasn't like a lot of video footage of him. There's no interviews with him and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
So it's kind of hard to like
get
what he was like.
Yeah, it's hard to.
That's why it's weird because all you see is these creepy pedo looking pictures, and you're like, this was the guy.
Yeah, well, yeah. When you look at the pictures, you're like, no way, no way, this guy got away with all this
and got all three of them.
Yeah,
it's just so weird.
Because I mean, like when we were talking about and watching Ted Bundy, I mean, you can kind of like see how people kind of like fell for him because he's got that. Yeah. He really does have that. But he had the looks too. He had kind of the full package. But this guy doesn't seem like
he just seems like some dork.
Yeah. Right? It's really bizarre. And I can't believe that Jan's mother was having sex with this dude while this dude was also raping her daughter. Like that's just so crazy to me.
And to just most likely turn a blind eye to that and just ignore it. I mean, as a mom, I feel like the only thing I'd be thinking about during that is like this exact situation was happening to my kid. I don't know. It's just, I don't get how you can just assume that he didn't. Like, he took her to Mexico and married her.
Yeah, seriously.
He married her. If he just took her to a beach resort and like.
But that's the thing. You got to remember though, like, I think a lot of it comes back to the LDS faith, because
that is true. There is
they
some
have
polygamy.
Polygamy is, sister wives. Like,
yeah,
they do have some weird
there's a lot
things.
of cases
There's a lot of
of
weird
pedophilia
things.
in the LDS church. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Same with the Catholic Church. But anyway.
Same with all the churches for real.
Yeah, seriously. And I would love to explore, the LDS church a lot more, because there's whole shows about people trying to leave the church and all sorts of sketchy things going on. But anyway, Robert at this point in time was still up on kidnapping charges, and his wife, Gail, used the affair information to blackmail the Brobergs into lessening the charges. Bob Broberg filed for divorce and made sure to be out of the house with the daughters when Marianne got the papers, which alleged that she was endangering their daughters.
Alleged.
Alleged. Bob recalls this being like the worst day of his life, like finding out, serving his wife divorce papers because she's having an affair with this person that kidnapped their daughter. And a lawyer advised Marianne to cut Robert Berchtold out of her life and go plead her case with her husband, who ultimately was relieved to reconcile. So Marianne finally realized this guy is totally taking me away from my family, trying to separate me from my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I got to get him out of my life. So they actually ended up remaining married until Bob Broberg died in November 2018. Despite the Brobergs stating that Jan was not taken against her will, the case against Berchtold went forward. He pleaded guilty to felony kidnapping in June 1976 and was put on 5 years probation and sentenced to 5 years in prison, all suspended except for 45 days and told to report to jail within 3 months. Factoring in his good behavior, he ended up only spending 10 days in jail that September. 10 days in jail for felony kidnapping. How the fuck does that happen? This guy was able to literally weasel himself out of the justice system too. But I think it came down to the fact that Jan's parents kept saying, "Hey, it was okay. We knew, we gave them permission," that type of thing, to the courts. They must have had to do that so that he didn't get the charges that he should have gotten. In the meanwhile, a 13-year-old Jan was begging her parents to let her go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where Robert Berchtold was running a family fun center there that summer. What the hell? Of course he would go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming and, do a family fun center. Creep. So Jan started begging her parents, let me go. Because during this whole time, she wants to see Robert Berchtold.
Yeah, and she felt like they were kind of limiting her time with him.
Oh, yeah.
Which was starting to piss her off.
She was getting really angry.
It was kind of like a forbidden love a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to turn into.
Well, yeah, because she had to complete the mission.
Yeah.
And she was legitimately having anxiety
tell anyone about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was tearing her apart.
Maybe she thought the world was literally going to end if she didn't do
or her
this.
family was going to, her family was going to be killed.
Yeah.
Essentially. So she started acting out, and eventually Robert called and told Marianne that Jan would just hitchhike to him if they didn't let her go. So Marianne, without her husband's knowledge, put Jan on a plane and sent her to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where Jan stayed for 2 weeks with Robert in his motorhome. How the fuck do you let that happen again?
Insanity.
It's just it's crazy that these guys made the same mistake twice or even multiple times. And Bob was completely livid. He was like, "What the hell are you doing?" God, to let her go back to this pedo again,
can you
God.
imagine making that decision? So weird.
Why would she do that? Why would she give in to that after everything? She knows
that's why
he's
there's
manipulative.
So much.
Yeah, that's why they get. God.
Because you can only be so ignorant, before it's just obviously you knew and you just didn't do anything.
You got to know what he's doing with her in their motorhome together. Good
God.
God.
Come on. There's got to be a parental red flag going off.
They were just straight up negligent about it. Straight up
I think they were just straight up letting it happen. It's so odd. Maybe they didn't want to disappoint him because they both kind of had crushes on the dude. So weird.
It's very bizarre that they didn't turn on him earlier, that they didn't just be like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
He's tearing our family up. He's clearly hurting our daughter or brainwashing her. They had to have the inkling of that. But they in the documentary, they just keep being like, oh yeah, we had no idea. We were just, we had no idea what he was doing with her. We just didn't know.
Yeah.
But I'm like, come on now. Especially the fact that he kidnaps her again. But before we talk about that, we want to thank our last sponsor for today, Fleur. If you want to go ahead and talk about Fleur.
Yeah, so Fleur is very different from any other type of perfume. So it's perfume. I should first start out by saying that. But what makes it different is it's made from really natural ingredients, completely non-toxic perfumes. We can view all their ingredients online so you can feel good about what you're putting on yourself. And they smell so good. Really clean scents that are natural and recognizable and have something for pretty much everything. I kind of describe their scents as like a mood.
Yeah.
Like it's a vibe.
And they're like, they say they're gender free. Like if you sprayed it, like if I even wore it, it wouldn't be a big deal because it sounds like it could be
they're just gender neutral
good for either.
Scents.
Yeah.
I mean, nature's gender neutral, right? So there's one called Greylock, which is a refreshing and restorative blend.
Which are the ones that you got?
Yeah, these are the ones that I got. So I have experience with them. And so this has a refreshing and restorative blend of pine and sea.
I like that one a lot.
Yes,
the Greylock.
I do too. This next one's my favorite though, the Sandara, which is calming and meditative, which obviously I like that one, of course. And that is inspired by a retreat into nature. And Hanami, which is aquatic and floral, subtle and warm. So they're really, really great. I really like the scents. And, there's so many nasty things and like things that we put on our bodies.
Oh, yeah.
The more that you can like control and make, buy from companies that really are transparent about what they put in their products, the better. So go to Flora.com today and use the code MileHigher to get 20% off your first custom Flora sample set. You can pick 3 scents to try and get credit towards a full-size bottle of your favorite.
That's cool.
Yep. So that's promo code MileHigher at Fleur.com, and that is PHLUR, and you will get 20% off with the code MileHigher on your first 3 fragrances.
Definitely check that out. They really do smell good.
Very good.
Not just saying that. All right. So the second kidnapping happened in August 1976. One night, Robert appeared at Jan's bedroom window, which Jan lived in the basement. So there was like a window to get outside from there. So it was pretty easy for him to get access to her room, and basically told Jan to put all of her belongings in a backpack and write a note indicating she was running away. Then they got in his Lincoln Continental and left Idaho and traveled to California. At one point, Jan did call her family, telling her dad that she still wanted to marry Berchtold and that he wanted to marry her. And to keep her away from her parents, Robert enrolled her in a Catholic boarding school in Pasadena, California, which is just so bizarre. Like he thought out everything too. That's why I keep kind of calling him an evil genius, because like he wasn't dumb. He was definitely smart, and he knew that he had to, he could have access to her if he created this fake narrative of essentially that Jan is his daughter. And what he told the Catholic boarding school was that he was a CIA agent who barely escaped from Lebanon with Jan, and that her mother had been killed. He also said that people were looking for him and that he needed the nuns to protect Jan. He would actually come back on weekends to take Jan away from boarding school and do his dirty work to her. God. And like back then, nobody checked IDs. Nobody was like, there wasn't all of like the security for schools and
I think
everything.
I mean, at places like that, I don't think they normally do, because a lot of these people really like in a situation like that, which those kind of situations, I don't know if it would straight up be a CIA agent showing up with someone, but they will often take in people without knowing exactly where they're from if they've come from like a traumatic situation. Like a lot of those places you don't need to have IDs and stuff at like with nuns, they're just helping people. So he took advantage of that, knowing that they probably wouldn't question it.
Right.
Because where else do you bring an orphan? Then,
it wasn't
to an orphanage.
She was, he said that was her biological daughter.
Yeah, but he said that her mom
mother
died. So, and he had to work.
Oh.
So
essentially
be orphaned.
Not a real orphan.
Yeah. Okay. So not a real orphan, but she would have been on her own if it wasn't for the nunnery, and they took her.
And I mean, it's kind of a plausible story that
Catholic boarding school. I keep saying nunnery.
And I think he thought that he was just going to be able to keep her there forever. Essentially, no one would be able to figure it out. But the FBI was already on to him. They basically tracked her down to the school and basically found out that she was under a different name. I think it was like Janice something she was going by, and they figured out that she was there. And despite some resistance at first from the school's administrators who were unaware of Robert's true identity, she was eventually taken back by the authorities to Pocatello, Idaho. But at that point, she had been in the boarding school for over 3 months. So it was 3 months that she was gone again at this boarding school. And Robert was living in Utah, driving over to Pasadena to the school to visit her on the weekends and continue to take advantage of her. Which Jan, in the documentary, she talks about like how many times she had a sexual encounter with Robert, and she said it was like over 200 or something crazy like that.
Fucking insane.
Which is absolutely insane.
Disgusting.
And the entire time, completely underage, completely illegal, and disgusting.
So sad.
So, however, Jan was listed as a runaway. She was booked into the Bannock County Jail for one night upon her return. Robert was charged with kidnapping again. And the hold that Robert had on Jan didn't really start to crack until January 24th, 1977, when Bob got a call that the flower shop he owned in town was on fire. Which turns out 2 men who were convicted of the arson were connected to Robert Berchtold. Robert Berchtold had paid both of them, I think, $1,000 to do it, essentially, sending a message to the Broberg family.
Yeah.
But the authorities somehow, I guess, were unable to ever connect that to him, which is so weird. It's so weird that the authorities were like never able to like pin charges on him. He was just like the
luckiest fuck.
Seriously.
He got away with everything. Oh, this was so emotional. During it, her father, I mean, God, her family does get so much shit. And like I said, rightfully so. They made a lot of fucking mistakes. But her dad said, and I thought this was so sweet, when his flower shop was burning to the ground, he literally said, "Let it burn. All I care about is my family," and like hugged his family.
Yeah.
And that's when Jan kind of snapped back to reality, remembered who she really loves and who her family is. And I'm sure she kind of had an idea at that point that it could have been Robert that did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think things were starting to make sense. At this point, she's 16 years old. So she's obviously growing up, and she's having other outside influence.
Not
kind
as
of
easily manipulated.
Right, exactly. Older. Well, I mean, as you get older and into your teenage years, you just naturally get smarter, and you start, sort of waking up to the reality of the world. When Jan was 16, she went to a summer drama camp at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and she met a boy she liked. When he bought her an ice cream one day, she actually freaked out and called her mom, begging to come home. It wasn't until then that she realized none of the terrible things Berchtold had told her would happen about the aliens, about her sister going blind, had come to pass. Because essentially this entire time she's being told to not talk to any other guy. That's what Robert Berchtold told her, is like, you cannot interact.
I want you for myself.
Yeah, you can't be with any other guy. And after she did this and nothing happened, she's like, oh shit, this guy's completely full of shit. And when she realized she was brainwashed, Jan's eventual reunion with her mom at the end of 1976 was far from loving. Jan recalls, "It was the worst day of my mother's life. Instead of hugs and kisses and crying, I just walked through the back door and saw my mother standing at the kitchen sink, and without a word, I walked past her and down the stairs to my bedroom. It was as far away from my family as I could get." Can you imagine, like, once you finally wake up out of that, like, delusional world you've been in for, like, the past, last couple years,
Yeah.
and realizing that my parents kind of let this happen to me, or definitely enabled him to do this to me.
It's kind of amazing that to this day, she has a pretty good relationship with them. It seems like they've done a lot of work on this, and they in the future end up writing a book about this, and she worked with her mom to raise awareness, and her mom definitely seems to snap to reality and realize like how fucked up everything was. So thankfully she was able to salvage that relationship with her parents, because I do think that would be you'd have to harbor a lot of anger towards your parents for letting that happen to you. I mean, your parents are supposed to protect you, and that this happened not only once but twice, and that she got raped so many times on their watch is just, I mean, insane. So I guess it's better for her to be able to forgive her parents and have them in her lives as support. Obviously you don't want to just like get rid of them. And that's good that they were able to work it out. But still, it's pretty wild. I don't know.
But
It'd be hard for me to get over that.
Yeah, and I don't know if like she could ever fully heal from that, like
yeah.
And obviously as a parent, could you ever live those mistakes down? Like you must just be filled with guilt and shame the rest of your life.
I think they do feel really bad.
Thinking about how you literally let your daughter down. And when Jan kind of came out of this, I mean, she was a completely different girl at this point.
Yeah.
She used to be this like happy-go-lucky, vivacious, adoring girl, but that was no longer. Like she was just completely emotionless in the sense like like emotionally dead and just removed from everything. So it's crazy that the fact that Robert was able to use these various brainwashing techniques and psychological manipulation as tools to completely take control over Jan, but also her family. For example, like the story about the aliens that Robert told Jan seems like crazy to most people, but with Jan, it struck a chord because the idea of a special, like Jesus, a special baby being born to the world, is kind of a parallel story in a lot of ways. Like she grew up with that story. So it, if you believe like the story of Jesus and Jesus being born and the Virgin Mary and all of this, how he kind of said like, your dad's not really your dad.
Yeah.
It draws similarities to those two stories. So Jan basically said that it kind of made sense to her. Like she didn't really question it that much because it's kind of a similar type of story. But even the word mission was extremely familiar to the young girl who was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Members of the church are strongly encouraged to go on missionary services across the world once they reach adulthood. So that was another reason why, she believed in this mission, because the LDS church literally believes in this mission. Like they go on missions and going out and to knock on people's doors. Like it's the same type of thing.
Right.
So Robert, like,
kind of took advantage.
I wonder if he was even like a real Mormon, like, or if he was just completely using it as like a cover. I mean, I don't know how you could be. Obviously, like Mormons don't teach pedophilia and all that, but I don't know. Maybe he saw it as like a good cover for him. Not only that, he kind of like he groomed them so well. He even talked to the girls about UFO stories and aliens and everything prior to him doing anything to kind of set that up in their minds and give them knowledge about it.
So much thought went into this. It's so creepy.
It's really crazy. But it wasn't until the summer of her 16th birthday in 1978 that Jan discovered a way to cope. It was at a theater camp, a place where she could tell other people's stories, even though she couldn't tell her own. Jan said, "It's where I could express emotions as another character." It was also where she began to question her mission. But despite the sexual abuse she suffered in her youth, Jan Broberg has used the training she received in theater camp to make a name for herself as an actress in Hollywood.
Has she?
Yeah.
I was going to say, she looks so familiar.
Totally.
What was she in?
So her resume goes back to the early 1990s. She appeared in a small role in the blockbuster film Iron Man 3, as well as having a reoccurring role in the TV show Everwood from 2002 to 2006, which is her biggest role. She also recently appeared on an episode of Criminal Minds, ironically portraying the mother of a boy missing for 3 years.
Wow. She probably can like muster up so much of her own emotion for those roles from her own experience.
But the biggest thing that her and her mother have done is like raise awareness about sexual abuse and, children that are reported missing. And
how it like can often be family members or family friends or family members. Yeah. Someone you trust. It's normally someone the family trusts.
So she brings awareness to this day doing this. And, that's why she made the film Abducted in Plain Sight, which I think there might be a sequel. And she's also made another film called Forever Be, which helps educate parents on how to protect their children from pedophiles, particularly if that person is close to the family. Yeah. Which is very, very good to know. But one of the last confrontations that Jan had, so there was like literally 28 years that went by that Jan had no contact with Robert Berchtold. But on March 6, 2004, Jan was giving a speech at a women's conference being held at Dixie State University in St. George, Utah. And it was around the time that the Brobergs started going public with their story. However, she soon learned that an uninvited guest had shown up and reportedly had a gun. Robert Berchtold, who is now 68 years old, came to the conference to interrupt Jan's speech and distribute flyers that protested his innocence. According to press reports at the time, a volunteer security guard asked to see the flyers, but Robert threatened him. Then, as the security guard walked away, Robert struck him with his white minivan. The guard flipped onto the top of the vehicle and was dragged for approximately 110 yards, and then Robert just sped away.
Holy shit.
Over 40 people witnessed the attack. The police later arrested Robert at a McDonald's restaurant. Jan said he was later convicted of multiple felonies stemming from that incident in St. George. Luckily, Jan never saw Robert at the conference because she was shielded by supportive family and friends. But the whole incident was so terrifying that she decided to get a restraining order against the abuser from her childhood.
Oh,
which I'm like,
so much
I would have done that day one.
Yeah. I had a bad roommate. I got a restraining order within like a week of her doing
I mean, it's not that
me.
hard to do. I'm surprised she didn't do that earlier.
Yeah.
But Robert fought the restraining order, something that Jan didn't know he had the legal ability to do. She soon found herself in a courtroom sitting across from the man that had kidnapped and abused her during the multiple occasions as a child. With numerous friends and families and supporters sitting in the courtroom, Jan explained her case to the judge. And when it was time for Robert to defend himself, Jan said he told the judge that his accuser was only doing all of this because she was just an actress looking for 15 minutes of fame, which is insane.
Yeah.
And like, there's a clip of it in the documentary of him saying like trying to be like, you're doing this just to get a movie deal or whatever.
Yeah.
Trying to like make it sound like it's completely, bullshit, the whole story and everything. Mm-hmm. But then she literally like shut him up and was like, why don't you come up here and tell the truth?
Yeah.
And of course he just like got super silent after that. But after the judge deliberated, he awarded Jan's request for a restraining order against Burchell. The judge advised Robert that he was not allowed anywhere near Jan for the rest of his natural life. Burchell was charged and found guilty of aggravated assault, possession of a firearm by a restricted person. And because he was found guilty, he was scheduled to be sentenced, but he did not want to go to jail. Knowing that he was going to go to jail, his brother Joe explains that he essentially overdosed on a bunch of medicine that he had. He took a whole bottle of heart medication and washed it down with Kahlua and milk.
Wow. Probably because he knew how pedophiles don't do very well in jail.
And the fact that he was able to avoid jail all these years is just insane. How did he do that?
And you can tell Jan is so like, she still is angry to this day that he got away with so much. Like, what did she say? He ended up spending 1 year in jail at one point, right? Didn't he spend 1 year in jail, she said?
Yeah,
for something
early on
else?
For a different crime. And actually, he pleaded guilty to one count of rape of a child in Salt Lake City in 1986. Yeah, 10 years long time ago. After the second kidnapping. But he had multiple offenses of rape on a child, and yet he still would get out. Like,
yeah.
Nowadays, I feel like if you especially have multiple cases of raping a child, you're going to be in prison for years.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And the fact that he
people
wasn't,
like him that changed the shit for.
So the fact that this guy, after all these years, never got charged for sexually abusing Jan is just absolutely insane. Like,
yeah, it is.
It's crazy.
It's extremely angering, honestly. It's ridiculous. And to just get away and just, God, a whole bottle of heart medication. So what would that do to you? I wonder what it did to him. I hope it hurt. I hope it was awful.
Such a cowardly way to go out. Can't even man up and tell the truth.
I know.
Some people are just so fucked. But one of the things that they kind of explored a little bit is like what caused Robert Burchell to do the things that he did. And it started going back and looking at his childhood, and his childhood was not very good.
Which, I mean, you could probably have guessed.
Yeah, exactly. He was kind of this like outcast child. He was never really a part of the family until I think his mom got sick or something. And then he was put into this almost like fatherly role at a really young age where he had to take care of his younger sister. And then I think there was like some sexual abuse there with his younger sister. So it kind of started there. And then, later on in life, he had this need to have like constantly be like grooming and having possession over a young girl. Yeah.
Yeah. He talked about that.
That's so weird.
Gross, so weird.
But it's so obvious. Like a lot of these just monsters have these things that happen to them from a young age or experiences that shape the rest of their entire lives, and they're never able to get help or never seek help or they just keep it under wraps and keep it going for years and years. Like same with Ted Bundy and all these other people that commit these dastardly crimes and
dastardly deeds.
And you just always wonder, like, why are you doing this? What is the point?
I mean, what I come back to over and over again is that hurt people hurt other people. It's the same reason that we get like nasty comments, like beyond mean comments from some people. Like someone's hurt them to make them be. That's why I don't even respond to that stuff or like really take it that seriously anymore. Because it's like they've probably been through some shit that made them angry or whatever. You know, this is obviously a much more intense scale of that, but over and over again with killers and pedophiles, like they've been through shit before, you know, they started doing that. So it's pretty crazy. And then in that sense, like, it's really hard to even figure out how to word this, but there's like some sense of empathy there for that person. At least I have it. A lot of people don't. But like, I feel like a shred of me still feels sorry for people that do things like this because of what they went through in their childhood. That like, if they didn't go through that, would they have had a completely normal life? And is that fair that someone else did that to them and took their life essentially by fucking them up and to the point where they...
It's like just a chain that keeps on going and going and going. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes on generations. And
well, and Jan now, I mean, she ended up getting married, but she got divorced and she had a kid. And she, to this day, she says, you know, I don't know how to love. I just don't... Oh my God. She doesn't have this ability to, you know, love and have all the natural emotions that somebody would have with a relationship because of this fucked up ordeal she went through with Robert Berchtold. So it's really sad that this happened. And
extremely, but I mean, she's very inspiring though. She has really made a lot of her life sense. And you know, what's really interesting is how many people, kids who get taken that come out of it and become like advocates, like really strong women.
Make it their mission.
Like J.C. Dugard made it her mission. Right. Elizabeth Smart made it her mission to help the missing. Amanda Berry of the Cleveland kidnappings worked on her local news and reported missing persons cases for like years after she was taken. Really, really brave to get on a platform and try to make something of your story. Take something good out of the darkness that you went through and use it.
I think that's best case scenario after these things happen to you.
I think that's probably extremely healing for these people to feel like it's not all for naught. At least I'm doing something with this. I'm
spreading
helping
awareness, preventing this from happening to somebody else.
Yeah, it's the only thing you can really do to make the situation somewhat positive in a weird way.
Yeah, I mean, you got to find something.
Yeah, the silver lining. You know, how can you take this and make it so that it's not just for nothing? Now, you went through this, didn't just go through this for absolutely nothing.
Well, and this is how we learn as like a society and a culture, and this is how, you know, we hopefully learn from these tragic events that happen and do everything we can to prevent it from the future. Like I think obviously, you know, these things still happen today, but I think it's far more difficult to pull off the manipulation and all of the crazy shit that Robert did now, just because I think we're, you know, way more keen to sex offenders, you know, the ability to look up a sex offender, like the sex offender registry has probably saved so many people from being, you know, involved with somebody like that because we now know who they are. We know where they are. I mean, obviously we don't know all of them, but it does give us some more awareness and we're becoming smarter as just a society.
I wonder if Jan, like if she didn't go through this, if she would have been an even more famous actress than she was, because she really does come across it like she's great on camera. She's great talking and really beautiful. And I feel like she really could have been a major actress, but you know, she obviously had a delay with her acting and everything. She went through a lot of shit and who knows, maybe something like this would hold you back.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there's things about her experience that hold her back. I mean, think about it. She's had to like literally get her whole life back. Yeah. She was completely brainwashed into thinking that she was on this alien mission with Robert. Like,
it's so crazy.
It's insane.
It's such a wild story. It really is. It's like, it's just insane that this could happen. Crazy.
It is crazy. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode. if you're interested in watching the documentary, it's called Abducted in Plain Sight. It's on Netflix.
It's really good. I would definitely suggest watching it because
it'll give you a better sense of the people that we talked about. And obviously Jan is in it and her parents are in it.
It's hard to make an opinion on people without seeing them. And
totally.
Really, because I feel like if you just listen to the podcast, you're probably just going to hate her parents and just have no sympathy for them and think they're idiots.
But
which
when
I said,
right.
Kind of.
When you watch it, you get the sense that obviously they never meant ill will towards their daughter. They never wanted this to happen to their daughter.
They seem like good people.
They're
victims too in a way.
They got completely manipulated by an evil genius. I mean, this guy is. At
the end of the day, thank God that they've come forward and are telling their story and trying to prevent this from happening to other people and warning other parents. Sure. Yeah, it's very brave.
To admit these things.
Writing a book about it.
Yeah. Yeah, which Jan has a book called Stolen Innocence, if you want to check that out as well. It's about her experience.
It's written by her mom, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, hopefully you guys found this case interesting. It's a truly bizarre one. And,
it is.
Yeah, so we will wrap it up there today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile Higher Podcast, leave us a like, subscribe on YouTube, or if you're listening to us on iTunes, give us a subscribe and review if you don't mind. We really enjoyed having this interesting discussion today.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? More true crime in the future?
Yeah. Well, my final thought and final announcement is that we do have a very exciting podcast coming. Our next podcast will have our first guest on it.
Wow.
So you'll have to wait and see who it is. But it's going to be lit. And you know them. It is a YouTuber.
Most of you probably know.
A lot of you are probably familiar with this person. And it's going to be lit.
It's going to be lit. It's going to be fun. Should we tell them the topic or make
No.
Oh, we got to
They'll figure it out.
All right.
I want it to be a surprise.
Then. All right, guys. Thanks again for listening. We will see you guys next week.
Stay safe.
And stay woke.
Bye.